Well, hi, Cheyenne.
Hi, Candace. Hello,
Nice,
YouTube Nation.
yeah, nice to see you
Great
and
to see you.
everybody. Um, Today, Cheyenne's going to talk about dopamine and pleasure, and I want to just share a little story about Cheyenne. I won't share the story of how I met her in prison, but I'll share about she's an acupuncturist, and acupuncture has been my favorite way of being in a healing process. Well, anyway, Cheyenne was in town one day and I was having a treatment. So I was on the table and she was doing something in my ears and it's like this energy ran through me and I went, whoa, that's better than sex. And most people, they think of acupuncture and they think of needles, and I think of whoa. So anyway, tell us more about pleasure, please.
Well, Candace and I did meet in prison, and I was treating people, helping people get off drugs using acupuncture there. And she came as a representative of a treatment facility. And I was just finishing up a shift, and the best way to show those ladies that came to see me was just to give them the experience of doing auricular acupuncture in the ears. And I'll explain at the end how that works and how that's kind of related to my topic. Um, People would ask me, what does acupuncture do for you? And I would say nothing. Acupuncture helps the body heal itself. The body heals itself, and acupuncture just helps it go faster. I'd like to talk about a topic. Right now, we are completely saturated where human beings have more access to repeated dopamine surges in their brain without any effort on their part. What causes dopamine to release? Sex, drugs, rock and roll. Um, the basal output of dopamine. Dopamine is in the central part of your brain. Most people know it's the hypothalamus, but it's also the ventral tegmental area and the substantial nigra area, if you're into that. It's very close to where our pain center is in this center of the brain. So it's kind of behind the medulla oblongata, in the center of everything. And so pain centers have complete access to our cortex, and pleasure centers have complete access to our whole brain. Normally, the dopamine center is a reward center. And so it's also heavily involved in reinforcement. And so when people made it to prison, they were doing too much of something. Usually the folks there had a failure in their pleasure center system. In other words, they didn't manage it well and something got them there. Well, where we are now, the first year I worked there was 1993, and now it's 21 years late, 31 years later. And so we have access to this on steroids. I mean, what we have access to is immediate gratification. We can shop Amazon and get anything we want. We can have any meal we want. I can order up Tinder and have sex in 2 hours. I can have my dealer drop off cocaine. I can have marijuana. I can have any form. I can drink it. I can dab it. I can smoke it. I can tab it. It's the strongest that ever was. Um, so uh, we have access. We don't have to wait for anything. If we're watching a show, we can finish it. We can just watch all 12 and get it resolved. If I'm looking for information, I can have access from it, maybe even from the creator of the information. I can go to the source. There's no waiting. Before the slot machines known as our cell phones and the computers rewards, reward. Before that was all day. There was a significant gap in reward, and the pain pleasure balance was heavily intact. And I would argue some generations had more pain than others. For example, I'm Generation X. We were parented 67% less than the generations before, or I mean, after us. I was a latchkey kid. Many of us had broken bones that were never tended to. We had other things. And we don't complain about it, because what it has done for us is we've had the pain, and so we don't seek the pleasure. Our generation, my generation, I think, Candace, we're slightly different generations, maybe 9 years apart. I think you're still part of the boomer at the end, and I'm part of the beginning of the. We tried to insulate the millennials from any kind of pain. Sometimes the generation that came after didn't have this. Now, this is in general. I know lots of people have gone through pain, but in general, they've had access more quickly than anyone else. I'm not saying that they have it better, because their economics aren't as good as what we had it in the 80s. What I could do and put myself through school is much, much easier than what they had. But, and also we didn't have the pharmaceuticals as young people, right now, we're trying to solve this brain imbalance with neurotransmitters. If you're low, there's stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin. If you're too high, you can take benzos like Xanax, Klonopin, Valium. And sometimes people do both. And then if you can't sleep, we can add another thing. So everything's in this brain chemistry. Mm-hmm. So if the pleasure center is constantly working, and you can see, we have ways to look at that. It lights up. We can see it light up and working. But if it's working full tilt boogie, full tilt boogie, full tilt boogie, just like if the pancreas works full tilt boogie, we eat sugar morning, we eat sugar evening, we eat sugar in the afternoon, we eat sugar for decades. The pancreas does one of two things. It goes on strike and says, I can't work anymore. I'm too tired. I'm in my sick bed, and we get diabetes and we have to add insulin elsewhere. Or in other rare cases, it turns into a Vietnam veteran where it overfunctions and the person is shaky and they need to eat all the time. The brain is an organ too. And when it overfunctions, it often shuts down, and people are getting something called anhedonia, which means they can't take pleasure in anything because their pleasure center is completely beat up. And so I'm just bringing up the concept to understand what's missing for us is the effort or the pain part of it. The pain of, when I was doing a report, we had to go to the library, which often involved a bike ride, involved this, and involved a card catalog, and involved looking that up. Now that's a dinosaur. Now you can't imagine how hard it would be to get the same information that you all can get and that we all can get right now.
Right.
And so we are reaching certain areas, and we're also evolving as souls. So I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm saying that we have to look into it. When we eat chocolate, chocolate has tyrosine. Tyrosine is a precursor to dopamine. There's lots of foods that you can eat with tyrosine in them, but that increase it. But it's not just you eat these foods and you get more dopamine, because sometimes people have viruses, and some of those foods like turkey and chicken and almonds are high in arginine, and some people have viruses, and so they can get like an outbreak of if they eat too much of those things. So I'm not here to give a dietary solution, but chocolate has a lot of tyrosine. And when you eat chocolate, it increases your dopamine 55%. Basal output increased 55%. When you have sex, it's 100%. Double, okay? When you do nicotine, it's 150%, okay? Oh. And you can do nicotine now and remove the negative parts of it, the pain, the smoke part, the smelly part, and just do a vape. So you take all that unpleasant part, and that would increase your your nicotine more, the dopamine even more. Mm-hmm. Cocaine is 225%, okay? Amphetamines, ready for this? 1,000%. Okay. The difference between cocaine and amphetamines and like fentanyl is cocaine, the body recognizes the opiate, and we do have substrates in our neurotransmitters. Our brain communicates neuron to neuron, and these neurotransmitters, which dopamine is one, helps them connect because there's a little tiny gap. So then there's these little neurotransmitters that go forth and communicate. When you do, like, say, opiates, your body recognizes that and has substrates. When you do amphetamines, your body has, it's like a foreign invader. If cocaine was like a foreign invader, amphetamines is an alien invader from a whole other planet. And that's why you see people that are on these for a long time, they lose their teeth, they lose their face, they lose their hair, because their body's doing everything they can to create homeostasis. If someone dies of an overdose, they just can't, they're dying of massive acidosis. They can't compensate with enough minerals and enough virtue from the rest of the cells fast enough to save that person's life. So I'm not here to put a solution down right now. I think that would take a whole other topic. One of the solutions that's recommended by, and the reason I'm talking about this, because I just finished this book, which I'm going to recommend for those who read, Dopamine Nation, and that's Dr. Anna Lemke. She puts it together really well. But one of the things that's recommended is a dopamine fast. And what that means is, say if you're addicted to chocolate, stop eating it. Or if you're on the phone, if you're doing porn on the computer, try to stop doing that. It's not easy to do that.
How long? Fast for how long?
Well, she says, that's a good question. She says, if someone says, well, I can do it for a week. Well, the brain can't recover in 1 week. It takes a month, it says, that she says. I do think that reducing helps.
Days of being drug-free in recovery centers, 21 days of being
Yes.
drug-free, and then, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it takes that to form a habit.
Mm-hmm.
I've made a conscious effort myself. I have this slot machine known as my computer. I don't have a smartphone. I have a flip phone, so that helps. So I'm out and about. I don't have the slot machine in my hand. I'll just check an email, and suddenly a half hour later, I'm scrolling through the shorts. I can't stop. I mean, I'm no different than anyone else. My brain is just wired into that. But taking, what the millennials say, touch grass. We all need to touch grass. And we've talked about grounding in other videos, but I wanted to give the main reason why. One of the other things that people are doing is introducing pain, like the Wim Hof method with cold ice baths and cold showers. If someone is heavily vaxxed and boosted, I wouldn't recommend that because there could be a blood issue with that. So I'm not an expert on if you have the pleasure neurotransmitters and addicted to some of these drugs that I've mentioned. Some of them are dangerous to stop on your own without a doctor's, like benzos, for example. People who quit heroin might be really loud, but it's not dangerous. People that are an alcoholic and a heavy alcoholic, that could be dangerous. And that's why acupuncture was introduced in the addiction field, because it helps bring the brain and remember what it was like to work on its own. And so I just wanted to give our brains today that just like our pancreas can wear out, and just like our knees can wear out, the pleasure center of our brain can wear out from so much pleasure. And then we have the inability to take pleasure in some of the more simple things in life. And anything that causes pleasure can become an addiction. I haven't had a lot of people who know me knows haven't had a television since I was 19 years old. And there was a period of my time when I was reading, but even that, once you get 2 or 3 good books in a row, you just want that again. And the books were so bad after that. I was so mad. I would just go to the end and just finish it because I didn't want to go through the pain of going through all the plot. I just wanted just give me the story. And then, almost for 2 years, I just cut to the chase, I know I'm admitting it, but we all have our weird addictions. People have weird sex addictions. I'm not judging those sex addictions, but sometimes it's that extreme that's needed.
It's a book, Cheyenne.
I know, I know. So anyway, sometimes pain is necessary, and we judge it as being bad, uncomfortable. A lot of young people that are born with a slot machine in their hand, like millennials, sometimes even having a conversation can cause anxiety. These drugs, Paxil, not Paxil, I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the drugs. I'm not so good at the drugs, but the sedatives, like the Klonopin, and sometimes they're on these drugs for heavy anxiety, and it just calms them right down. Oh, Xanax is what I'm trying to think of. They have to take that because it's too painful. Even real life, even interacting is hard. And it's because some of those centers are damaged in their brain.
One of these about that, I think a lot of it has to do with anxiety and people struggling like that. It has to do with what they're saying to themselves. And as long as we're busy and distracting, we can keep ourselves from that. But stopping, and do you remember in the beginning when you were learning to meditate, how hard it was to just sit for 5 minutes? And that's the process now. I mean, I could meditate all day, but that's the process, is getting that. And so I want to share though. Oh, go ahead. Okay, I want to share a couple things. I like to give tools.
Yes.
And I'm more hands-on now, especially since, well, anyway, one of the things I've been watching some videos on YouTube, and I apologize for not having the names, but I can find them and put them down below. But one of them, well, actually, they both had to do, one was talking about the central nervous system. They both had to do with the ears. The one I did last was so amazing, Cheyenne, and it just was everything simple, just all around, and pull, and I would just say I want to say molest your ears.
Yes.
Really get in there. After I did that, I just felt so good. And I'm highly sensitive, which is part of ME CFS. And so I can feel it immediately. And it's just wonderful. And so a couple things that I'm thinking. One, the Gen Z are new to the planet. The energy is really hard for them. What I see in the future, and I'm probably not going to be here to see it, but what I see in the future is we're going to go into a place where we're going to be able to communicate without words again. And
Yeah.
I think the book was called Native Tongue. I read a long, long time ago, but that was the concept before we had words, before we put names to things, we could communicate. And when you name things, you lessen, it's like, okay, I can name 10 things. Well, now I have 10 things. Before you had everything. And I do want to say, with the MECFS and the crash I had, and what my brain's been going through, I'm really aware of that, because I communicate, I mean, with my family who have crossed over all the time. I communicate with people all the time, and then they call me, or I'm starting to do that. And so I want to just get that thought out there for people. But anyway, the takeaway is your ears. So
The ear is a microsystem. The whole body can be mapped on it, just like hand reflexology, foot reflexology, and iridology. The great thing with the ears is it's close to the brain. And so it's very, very quick acting on the brain. We can't press our eyes like that, but we can press our ears. And that's why it was such an amazing opportunity for a young rookie like me to be able to go. You can treat 30, 40 people an hour doing that. And there were days that I treated 100. And when you treat 100 a day and you do that over a decade plus, it's only a decade where I treated that many, and then I moved to Colorado. It's you learn. It's amazing. It gave me faith in the human immune system and what the body can do. And so I would also say, don't be afraid to put yourself in situations of adversity. A lot of people, even if we've had a bad childhood or even if things have been stressful, we have had a relatively pain-free, easy living. We don't have to wash our clothes on a washboard and everything like this. A lot of millennials especially had a lot of things easy for them compared to other generations. And so it's like hot house flour. When the wind comes, it's difficult. So maybe as an adult, you have to deal with that wind, when as a child, they could have dealt with it much easier.
Mm.
And so I would just encourage you to find ways to deal with stress, to give yourself a dopamine fast if possible. So that, I'm not saying it forever, and give your brain a break, or get acupuncture or do reflexology like Candace is saying, or when you feel a struggle or feel a pain or feel emotional or feel other things coming up, realize that that's just a counterbalance sometimes, and let it, not judge that as it's so negative.
Exactly, to just watch it and let it happen. Yeah,
Yes.
because we don't get in so much trouble when
Yes.
we react, even if it's within us. If we trust, it's part of the process. Yeah, thank you for that.
And if you're in an addiction process, remove the shame from it and understand there's a real physiology here with porn and with drugs and with access. There's real physiology going on. And if you can understand and interfere with that, I do recommend counseling if possible, because that you will get a dopamine release sharing with someone else, but especially someone therapeutic. It's not the same sharing with like family members or people you live with. When you have four eyes looking at you and the other person who's there looking at your issue and creating sacred space, it matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you, honey.
Thank you, everyone.
I really appreciate this, and yeah, thank you. So I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
I love you.
I love you guys. Bye for now.